Hello and welcome to part two of Understanding 2021 Federal Assistance Options. I am Crystal Gibbons, the Program Manager for the Emergency Child Care and Technical Assistance Center here at Child Care Aware America, and I'm joined by Gary Romano of Civitas Strategies, who will provide two important updates on the federal assistance options, one on the funding formula for PPP, and then guidance on the employee retention credit. During this mini session, you will hear again from Gary Romano. And then also this is a follow-up to the wealth of information that was shared during part one of our federal assistance webinar that took place on February 5th, where we discussed 6 questions to ask to determine funding, also reviewed the stimulus navigator, and then there was much more information in that February 5th session. And if you would like to access that recording, it is available on the Child Care Aware website on our events page. And with that, Gary, let's jump right in and let us know what are the significant changes that CCR&Rs and childcare businesses need to be aware of.
Absolutely. And Crystal, thanks for having me back. I'm glad to talk to everyone today because it's very exciting news. If you are a childcare provider with employees or without employees, we've got news for you. So everyone should be able to get something out of this call, hopefully.
Yes.
So first, let's talk about those without employees. So if you are a sole proprietor with no employees, or if you're a contractor, 1099 contractor, and of course have no employees, you may know that last week the funding formula changed. So this is a really big deal for you. Previously, when we would calculate a PPP loan for you, we had to use what's called your net, right? So your gross is the total amount that you get into your business, right? Then you take all your expenses out, and then there's that stuff that's left over, that's the net. And so we had to use the net, and we took the net, we divided it by 12 for an average monthly payroll, and then multiplied by 2.5, and that was your loan. As you can imagine, once you take those expenses out, that number's typically significantly lower. The rule that changed, which is so big for us, is that we're now allowed to use the gross. So the amount you took in before you have anything taken out in terms of expenses. And as you know from the past video, we're working with many providers in the state of New Jersey, as well as across the nation through homegrown childcare. And so, we started to do immediately calculations on the difference. And what we're seeing is most providers could see a 2 to 3 time increase in their PPP amounts. And in fact, we even had one earlier this week, one of my colleagues, Greg Nielsen, had, which was 5 times the amount they would have gotten.
Nice.
So yeah, I know, it's a great deal.
Yeah.
So what does this mean for you? If you haven't done the PPP yet, this is a great time to do it if you're in this category. If your loan is in process, make sure you're getting the bigger amount. Ask your bank. If you've already got your PPP loan, unfortunately, right now, this is not retroactive. We're hoping Congress will change that, but it will take an act of Congress to do it. Additionally, as some of you may have heard yesterday, we'll see what happens, but there was in both the Senate and the House bipartisan measures to extend the PPP out to the end of May. If that were to happen, many of you could apply for a second loan and use this formula. So that's pretty exciting news if you don't have employees.
Yeah, it's really good news, yeah.
Yeah. So let's transition if you do have W-2 employees. So, I know that some of you family care providers, that's almost every center, right? One of the things that we've talked about in the past is the employee retention tax credit. And I know this makes a bunch of you a little uncomfortable when you hear tax credit, but remember, this is a payroll-driven stimulus program. I would argue in many ways, this is very similar to the PPP in the way it calculates things and the way the process goes. This involves your payroll provider, not 18 tax accountants and lawyers, okay? So just want to make sure, because I know some of you are a little bit worried when you hear tax credit. So the employee retention tax credit is a great opportunity for you, and we have more information that we're going to share with you in a little bit. As Crystal alluded to, we have a simple to use guide that could take you through some of the details, but just at a high level, what happens is this: essentially, the federal government is saying, things have gotten tough. We're glad you're keeping people employed because it's cheaper both, in terms of economics as well as socially to keep people employed than to have them on unemployment. So accordingly, for keeping people employed during these tough times, we're giving you some money to keep that up. So there's been 3 triggers for this tax credit up till now, right? One is if you had in 2020 a revenue drop of 50% or more in a given quarter. In 2021, that went to 20% drop or more. Second was if you had a state-ordered closure. So, I know many of you, especially around March, were forced to shut down. And so during that time, if you kept your employees, you could get paid for it. And the credit amounts are really quite large. In 2020, you can get up to $5,000 an employee. In 2021, up to $7,000 an employee per quarter. And by the way, with the new stimulus that was signed yesterday, this continues through the end of this calendar year. So theoretically, that could be up to $28,000 per employee if you hit the criteria. There was a third criteria that we didn't talk about, and that was called a partial cessation of operations. And the reason why we didn't talk about it was up until last week, late last week, the Treasury guidance really amounted to, we'll know it when we see it. So what happened was, accountants across the country did their best to try to come up with what that number might be, right? What does a partial cessation mean? And they were all over the place. So the American Institute of CPAs pushed Treasury to come out with some guidance and said, look, help us out here. And so we got that guidance last week. And what they said was this: a partial cessation of operations is a 10% or greater decrease in your capacity to provide goods or services. So the example they use is a restaurant. Restaurant, let's say, had 10 tables in it. Because of social distancing, now it has 6 tables. That's considered partial cessation. And it has to be because of government order. So you can see in this case, it's a 40% reduction in their ability to seat people. Mm-hmm. Similarly, this can apply to you and your operation. So if, for example, I was talking to a childcare provider just today, licensed capacity, 60 kids. Right now, if she had to fit all the kids she could in there because of social distancing, the most she could serve would be 43. So this triggers the employee retention tax credit for that given quarter. Now, keep in mind, this can be retroactive. So if, because we are getting more definition along the way, the government is honoring claims for 2020 as well. So in other words, if let's say you were in this category, right? Let's say in March you shut down, you then had to reduce your capacity because of government orders, appropriate government orders. You now, to today, could claim this tax credit. Now, couple of things, right? One is you can't use PPP money at the same time you're using the employee retention tax credit, right? So if Crystal is on the PPP in May, we can't also double dip and say to the government, you have to pay for it twice. But if June, she's off the PPP, we can do that, right? So you could see where this adds up. And in New Jersey, what we found is in our work there that many centers can get as much or more than their PPP in tax credits. So this is a real opportunity. And I know many of you say, well, then how do I get this in a check? What happens is the tax credits, for reasons I've never been able to understand, go into your Social Security, your employer's Social Security tax account. That's why they're called tax credits. But everything else is around payroll, right? So the way you do this is you talk to you first, of course, determine if you're eligible. We have that in the guide. Second, you're going to talk to your payroll provider. Like I know many of you use ADP, for example. This is a simple call to ADP. ADP runs the calculations. They let the federal government know Crystal is supposed to get these tax credits. If it's for a previous quarter, the IRS will send you a letter and say, hey, Crystal, we understand from ADP, we owe you $20,000 in tax credits. Would you please give us a call? You have to call them and let us know if you want to check or if you want to start using them now. That simple. If it's the current quarter, you can use a very simple form called the Form 7200. We have instructions in that guide I alluded to, and you can actually get an advance on them and get that check earlier. So you don't even have to wait till the end of the quarter. So this is a huge opportunity, and this partial cessation means a lot of you who couldn't hit revenue triggers because your states did the right thing, they continued your subsidy levels and everything, but I know your expenses went above that. So you couldn't get any stimulus money beyond your first PPP. This becomes a tremendous opportunity. And like I said, with yesterday's signing, this goes through to the end of the year. So when the PPP closes, you still have this as an option.
Yeah. So yeah, lots of great information. And thank you, Gary, so much for just providing us that breakdown. And so how can individuals access that guide that you were referencing, and what's included in that guide?
Absolutely. So if you go to www.civstrat, C-I-V as in Victor, strat.com/stimulus-navigator, you'll go to our page where we have a free navigator. This has been paid for out of the generosity of the Mar Foundation and the Taub Foundation. So this is free for you to use, for you to share. And you'll see on that page, we have the Stimulus Navigator, which takes you through 6 very clear questions on determining what stimulus you're available or is available to you, and it tells you how to pursue it. Again, very easy to use. We also have a little worksheet up there. So if you want help on some of these calculations with a spreadsheet, it's there as well. But you can also do everything in just, old paper and pencil. So please don't hesitate to take a look at that. If you're a family care provider, if you have questions, we're in partnership with Homegrown Childcare. We're providing free email TA at ppp@civstrat.com.
All right, thank you. And that was going to be my next question. How do they contact you? So thank you so much, Gary, for providing the information. And we hope this has been valuable and helpful. This has been very good news, and being able to help individuals, businesses get access to in the most bang for their businesses. And hope you've answered questions that they have. And if you have additional questions, feel free to reach out to Gary, and also utilize that Stimulus Navigator. If you have additional questions that Child Care Aware can answer for you, we are here and available to assist you. Please contact us using the request assistance button on our website, which is childcareaware.org. And you can also access our help center for resources and information that will assist you as you're working with the families and child care programs in your local community. So this is CCR&Rs, child care providers. Please contact us with those additional questions that you have. And then again, we thank you for joining us, and we look forward to assisting you.